Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is the legendary. She is an incredible woman. Her name is Tori Geiger. She's the author of a book called From Vulnerable to Victorious. She has a chronic heart disorder and is passionate about helping others with chronic illnesses through her book, through her blog, through her courses. She's a self-publishing school student. We work with her a bunch. She's been kind of one of the most fun people to work with, and just see her the book start this whole business or help grow this whole business. And she's a college athlete. She's a bunch of things, but I think all of which are in some way inspiring to others. And I think that's your mission, Tori. So great to have you here.
Yeah, you nailed it. Thanks for having me. I'm grateful for SPS, and it's been life-changing. So good to be here.
Yeah, well, we're going to dive in and hear a lot about your journey. Before I do, if you're hearing or listening to this, depending on how quickly after the release that you're listening to this. So this is kind of rolling up into Author Advantage Live month. So if you haven't already gotten a ticket for Author Advantage Live, you'll hear about it a little bit and kind of in Tori's story. But if you haven't got a ticket, grab a ticket ASAP. You can get a ticket at authoradvantagelive.com. And all the details are there. It's an amazing 3-day conference that'll help you sell more books and grow your author career. So authoradvantagelive.com, grab a ticket before prices go up. Grab it this week. Okay. So let's kind of go to the beginning of our journey working together, which is kind of the start of this book, which has been kind of just rolling into a bunch of other things. So how did you originally hear about SPS, and how did you decide to work with us?
Yeah, so I heard about SPS on a podcast. It was actually the John Gordon Positive University podcast.
Cool.
I'm a huge fan of the Gordons. I actually just met them recently and I'm good friends now with them. But at that point in my time, I didn't know them. And so actually it's kind of a funny story. My senior year of college, I met with a local author, and I was so excited. I had most of my book written, and I was asking her all these questions, and she like literally looks at me point blank and goes, "Victoria, who would want to hear your story?" And I was just like, ouch, like that was okay. That was mean. And I get where she was coming from. And we talked a little bit more about it. And she's like, you don't have a platform. You're not famous. Nobody knows you. Like, who's going to read your book? And so I really kind of took that to heart of like, okay, I got to build something to like have credibility if I'm going to do this. So I spent a lot of time building that credibility before I wanted to launch. And then I heard about SPS on the Positive You podcast, and I was like, man, these people know what they're doing. And I just remember telling my dad that I was like, when I'm ready to publish, I'm going to go through SPS. They're kind, they seem nice, and they know what they're doing. So then fast forward to a year ago. Yeah, about a year ago. I pulled the trigger and signed up, and here I am.
That's awesome. And so where were you at in your journey when you signed up? And then was that before or after AAL, or what did that look like?
I signed up right before, and I had already had most of my book written, but then I started actually going through the course and understanding like, how do you like structure a chapter? How do you title your chapters? And like even the title of my book, I didn't have. Cool. And so that's what SPS really helped me finalize, was getting all that in the continuity and having a lead magnet, which I hadn't even thought of as part of it. So that was all through SPS.
Cool. That's awesome. And so you'd already written a lot of your book. It sounds like it helped you to go back and make the book better. You joined SPS, and then a few weeks later, Author Advantage Live happened. Is that about? Okay.
Yeah. And I had a call with Aaron Schaefer, and he was like, you should do Accelerator. And I was like, okay, maybe, like I'm new to this. And just the more I heard from other people and just learning from the speakers and everything, I was like, man, like, I want to build an author brand, and this is what I need to like level up. And so I did it.
Cool. That's awesome. We'll come back to Author Advantage Live a little bit later and hear about kind of your takeaways and encouragement for other people who might be thinking about going to that event.
Yeah.
Talk to me about toughest part of writing the book. What was it? What did you learn? And then was there anything that you learned that you did a little bit differently? You already alluded to this, but like after joining SPS with having some of it already written.
I think having the structure of SPS guiding you along of like setting like mile markers was really
Hmm.
helpful for me because I'm kind of a goal oriented person. So having those mile markers is just super helpful. And I think that was one of the biggest parts. And I think having that accountability with those mile markers was
Mm.
really good. I think my thing that I also learned is like I'm really good at batching things. So like I might not be writing every single day, but I could set aside times during the week that I was writing and that worked for my schedule and just sticking to
Mm.
it. The other thing I think that was important for me is like consistency, but grace. Like you're aiming for
Mm.
consistency, but you always have grace with yourself. I actually, during the process of writing my book, I actually landed myself in the ER because I was having panic attacks from having just flashbacks from a lot of like traumatic events that I've had, like I had in high school when I was defibrillated 3 times. And so like I was starting to have flashbacks and it was really difficult just reliving stuff. And so I had to take time off for a couple weeks to just kind of like reset. And for me, I'm hard on myself with a lot of things. And so I think having that in mind of like consistency but grace because life happens. So yeah.
That's so great. So, and I want to come back to that, but you talked about plan to your strengths, whether that's writing 15 minutes every day or whether that's batching. For you, it was batching. You talked about consistency and grace. I love that. That's a good 1-2 combo. And then you touched on something about going to the ER with having flashbacks while you're writing. Can you speak to that? I think a lot of people, we did this Get Published workshop a couple weeks ago in person in Austin, Texas, and people are, our goal was to write as many words as possible in the time that we were there. I think we ended up with 340,000 words written in 2 days and a bunch of drafts finished. But one interesting thing is multiple people had to walk out of the room because they were reliving past experiences. People were breaking down crying. I mean, it's, in a lot of ways, I would say for some people and for some topics, writing a book is kind of like free therapy.
Yeah.
It's you're going through this, but that can be difficult. So how did you navigate that? And what would be your tips or recommendation for people who are writing about a painful subject?
I think first have a therapist.
For
I was
sure.
going to my
Yeah.
therapist a lot with writing it, and I think honestly, like enjoy the process of it, even though it might be like painful. I think I even journaled about my like publishing process to help me process what I was going through, because really my book is a book to my younger self, and a lot of the lessons I've learned, and so living through a lot of that again. I think asking for help, which is something I'm horrible at. And so I think asking for help from a therapist or others around you and letting others know, like, this is hard for me, like I'm doing this thing, but this is difficult. So I think communicating that is really important. And then I think I'm a big fan of journaling. So I think as a way, like journal what you're experiencing while you are writing your book.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's kind of like what you say of like, you'll love who you become through like the
Mm.
process. And
Hmm.
it's so true. And I think if you journal it, then you get to also like go back and see like who
Yeah.
you've become. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's cool. That's really awesome. What would be your tips? And I guess let's talk specifically to the writing process, like knowing what you know now. What would be your tips or advice for the Tori of 12 months ago or any of the other Tories out there who maybe they're writing about chronic illness, maybe they're writing about a difficult, situation in their past or past experience. What would be your tips about how to write a great book about that topic?
I think it's kind of like what Mick Spears was saying on another podcast episode of just like you have to get into that avatar. And I think the cool thing about for me, I have a community of women that I'm talking to like on a daily basis. So you're really engaging with your avatar all the time. So I think it's not only remembering like who you were like that much long ago, but also like being able to engage with your avatar on a regular basis and ask questions. And I think a lot of the things I put in my book came from questions my avatar was asking. And so I think that's kind of the key to make sure you're putting it together right.
Got it. And so did you have, beyond an avatar, did you have a specific person that you were writing? I mean, you said it was to
Yeah.
me previously.
Yeah.
Was that who you were writing to? Did you have someone else in mind?
Yeah, there's actually a girl, her name's Izzy. She's 14 and she's in high school, and I talk to her a lot on social media. And so she's like a very similar version, I would say, of me. And so I think I kind of was like, okay, if I was talking to Izzy, who's basically me in high school, what would I say? And so I kind of, that helped me channel it.
Wow, that's cool. And so do you feel like doing that helped you write a better book, have a clearer voice, know what to say, what not to say, all that stuff?
Yeah, I took so much out of my book that like I shouldn't have had like in there in the first place, of just too much in there. And
Mm,
it helped me just like consolidate what's actually core to what the message is and what needs to get put maybe in a later book, or maybe they're not ready for that step yet, because
mm,
14-year-old me is not ready to hear this. They just get mad if they heard
mm,
this. So yeah.
mhm. And so I'm making a note of that. How did you, on that note, how did you decide what to cut and what to keep in the book? And when that part of the process came.
A lot of it was guessing. Some parts, also just running it by like people I trusted. So like my dad is a huge mentor of mine, and so he actually like he was part of my self edit. Basically, is I'd run things by him of like, do you think like this fits? Does this flow? I relied on that, and also my editor, just to tell me what flows and what just needs to get cut.
Cool. Any advice or lessons learned from the editing process on finding or working with an editor to make a better book?
Just thoroughly vet your editors. I feel like I got really lucky. I got to use Kat Wander's company as my
Cool.
editor. And they really had my voice, because I wanted it to sound like I was talking to the reader.
Mm,
And they really did a good job of that. And I had lots of other people I reached out to. They sent me samples. I was just like, this isn't my voice. Like, this sounds like
hmm
a 40-year-old man or somebody like talking, not a 24-year-old. So I think really making sure that they have your voice in it.
Okay. And you talked about getting advice or feedback from your dad. I'm curious around that because I always give the advice of, hey, don't take advice from people who aren't your target avatar. So if
Yeah.
you're writing to 14-year-old girl Izzy, and then getting your advice from your dad on the book, how did you balance that with knowing what to take, what not to take? Is this helpful? Is this
Yeah.
the voice of the 40-year-old man?
Yeah. I think I really like, I took my dad's advice, but I also like through a filter of kind of like,
Hmm.
he reads a ton of books, a ton of like John Maxwell, John Gordon. Like he just has like a really good, like that's where I get my love of reading from. And so I just trust his like intuition with just like the style of writing and the flow. And then when it came to actual the concepts and that kind of stuff, that's where I was, that was close to me, of like that nobody else gets to really maybe like talk about or tell me what to cut there. Like I take the reins there.
Cool. That's a great distinction. Let's fast forward to launching and marketing the book.
Yeah.
So how did you launch the book? What were maybe the two or three things that you made sure that was really important leading up to the launch? And maybe the two or three things that you did to successfully launch the book?
Yeah. So when I launched, my word for this year was intentional. And so I wanted that to be kind of a part of my launch. So I had like 200 people on my launch team. And I had the 3-tiered launch, like you guys coach about, and that worked really well. And so I did that, and I used a tool called BombBomb. And it's like a video email tool that you can plug into your emails. And so basically to every single person on my launch team, I sent like a personal video message to, and just said something like, I'm grateful for you. Like, and depending on what tier they were, I'd say, just a reminder, leave a review when you're done. And so like, and then the cool thing with BombBomb is you can also see when they've read it. So I could actually like see who had opened it, who I need to follow up with, all that kind of stuff. And everybody just loved getting a video message. People that teammates that I haven't talked to since high school, or coaches. It was just really cool. So that really
Mm,
helped. And then as soon as I hit bestseller and like #1 new release on Amazon, I like took all the screenshots in the world and put them into emails to send out for podcast interviews, and just had a script. And then I had a video message in BombBomb to that person. So I'd listen to the podcast, tell them what I liked about their podcast, how I think I'd be a good fit. And then everybody loved the video messages. And then I'd land a podcast. And then after that, I would then send a follow-up email to them with a bomb video that just asked for a referral or anybody you think would be a good fit. And then a lot of those people would send me 3 or 4 more friends or CC me on emails to connect them with their friends. And so it just kind of spiraled.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you beat me to the punch. I was going to ask you about that. So you had a ton of, and we'll backpedal to the launch here in a bit, but you had a ton of success with podcasts, with PR. I think at one point you mentioned you got 10 podcast interviews in 3 weeks or something. How'd you do it? I mean, that you talked about the process there. Was there anything else that worked or that, how'd you get your first win actually?
First win. Oh, I think the first one was literally just a bomb video of just, I was sitting in my hotel room in Florida because my mom had just had surgery. And so we were down there, which was a whole nother story for our launch of being in another state, trying to launch your book in a different time zone, which was fun. But yeah, so I was basically just sending random emails. I had the nifty 50 list from Accelerator, which made it super nice. But I recommend listening to the podcast first. And so I would listen and just take really good notes of what I learned and just really make it personal. I didn't want anything to sound canned. And I had so many hosts to say, I love this. Like, this is the coolest reach out that I've had. And so I think that was the main thing that made it successful.
That's cool. I'll give 2 notes. So if you'd like to learn more about the nifty 50 list that she talked about, I talked about that in chapter 24 of my new book called Published. Also, if you mentioned the 3 levels of engagement for a launch team, so that's on page 115 in Published. So if you want to learn more about either one of those concepts, check out the book, and it's in the book there. So the bomb videos, it sounds like that worked really well to get podcast interviews. Then you use the social proof from the launch to also spur on podcast outreaches. Then you said follow up bomb to podcast hosts after doing the podcast interview to get to ask for anyone else that they know or any of the podcasts or anything like that. So that worked well on the podcast front. Did you do any of the other author appearance stuff that we talk about? Did you do any speaking gigs? Did you do any local PR, newspaper, TV, any of that stuff, or just podcasts?
Yeah, I did local speaking. So I'm connected with a lot of heart organizations, having CHD myself. So my first, literally like a week after I launched, I spoke at the Children's Heart Foundation walk. And so I got to meet a lot of heart families and be a guest speaker there. So I think that was kind of my only other thing, was just coming and speaking to groups. I did a lot of Zoom virtual, like at that time, there was just a lot of like virtual meetups for heart community type things. So I'd just be a guest and talk about the book. I did a lot of IGTV, like live interviews with people too. And that really helped.
Cool. For the in-person speaking, did you have books with you? Was it more just the speaking stuff? Did you sell books as part of that? Did you build books into the speaking gig? Like, how did all that stuff work?
Yeah, so I didn't have any books with me. My dad had actually bought a ton right when I launched, and my author copies hadn't even come. So I just used the ones he bought and used them at the speaking engagement. And I did it for free just because it was my first kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then we just donated all the proceeds of the books to the heart organization there. So yeah,
that's great. Making a difference, building the brand, and spreading awareness about the book, all 3 in 1. I think it's a beautiful thing and something you could probably double down on and continue to double down on. What one thought and one thing that this is a podcast interview turned quasi coaching call. But one thing that I would really think about if I were you is local TV and newspaper and stuff like that, and using and also doubling down on the local speaking gigs to spread awareness about the book and to spread awareness about just the work that you're doing. I think that's the beautiful thing is, I mean, you kind of have this transcendent topic where people would bring you on to talk about the topic, right? Where a lot of people that they have this business that's like, okay, the TV or newspaper or what, they would never bring you on just to say, hey Chandler, how do you help people write books?
Yeah.
But I could come on and say, oh, I wrote this book published. Let's talk about the 3 steps.
Yeah.
Right. But I think with you, it's a double win. And I think that could be a very powerful thing to just continue building credibility and awareness on the book specifically, but also the business.
Got some reach outs to do.
Yeah, some bonbons to the local
Yes.
newspaper and TV and all that stuff. I just know that works so well for me with my painting company. But then, I mean, it just sparks so many things. And that's been one thing I've been really challenged on by my buddy, Hal Elrod. Indirectly, I just saw him do it, right? He never said, Chandler, you need to do this. But I just noticed he would bring books and everywhere. And
I've started to do that.
Cool. Nice.
I keep them in my purse. I have a really big purse. So
that's awesome. Well, hey, looking back, what are the 2 or 3 things that sold the most copies of the book as part of the launch or immediately after the launch?
I would say podcast interviews, 100%. I think people that listen to podcasts are people that buy books, and most of the time. And so I think that sold the most. And then I would also say like some of the engagement, like some of the speaking engagements, like the Heart organization got a lot of word out there. And I had actually like cards with me that had a QR code. So if I didn't have books, they could scan it. And then
cool.
for like a limited amount of time, for like the rest of the month, I like basically all those proceeds would go towards the Heart organization. So it gave them time. So doing stuff like that, I think really sold the most copies.
That's a cool idea. I love that idea. How have you used the success of the book to launch and grow your business? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's helped me launch my courses. And I think it came from a lot of women reading my book and then asking more questions that were more in depth. So I'm like, oh, I'll build a course. So I think that was just a natural offshoot. And I used basically my audience that I had from the book, and I used my credibility. Like I've done the thing, so I can actually speak to it. And so I think that helped me have credibility to launch my course. And the people that loved my book then want to take my course because they loved it so much. They want more, and they want one-on-one coaching with me. Cool. And so that helped.
That's great. The root word of authority is author. And you become an authority by becoming an author, right? So you're living it. So have you gotten a bunch of customers from people who found the book and then went and found your courses?
So far, I think everybody that took my course so far has read my book. I just finished. Yeah, I finished That's my awesome. Beta. It was basically my beta was the first session. So I'm launching my next round in the fall. But basically everybody had found me through social media, but had read my book.
How many people were a part of that beta?
I just had 3 because at the time I own another company. So my time wise, I couldn't do more than 3 people because we did individual and group coaching.
Okay.
So it was a lot. It was intensive, but I learned a lot.
For sure. That's great. And that'll make this next cohort even better. What's your other business?
So I own a bookkeeping business. So I'm kind of an accounting nerd. And so that's what we do. We do a lot of bookkeeping for realtors and small businesses. And we're actually launching courses this summer for bookkeeping. So
is there a bookkeeping book in the future?
Probably. Somewhere in there.
Bookkeeping for realtors?
Yeah, probably.
That's awesome. Well, a couple final questions, I'd say. Is what was looking back, what was the most helpful part of the Accelerator program?
I think just being in kind of like almost like a fish tank of people that are like the same as you, just they have the same goals. I think it's like so true that like who you surround yourself with is so important. And like it's kind of one of my favorite speakers is Ed Milet, and he talks about like things are caught, not taught. And it's so true. In like Accelerator, you're just surrounded by all these people that have big goals. They want to have impact, and they're all shooting the same direction. And so to be in that environment, you are kind of forced to level up. And I think if you have big goals and you have big dreams, I'm a big dreamer, so you have to be in that environment. And so that's what's been most helpful for me.
That's awesome.
And the community is awesome. So
yeah, great people all around. Looking back over the last year, obviously we're about to go into year 2 of the Accelerator and hopefully help you even more. And land more podcasts and grow the business and all the things. It's going to be a big year ahead. I'm excited to be working with you some more. Like I said, you're one of our favorite people, and you're making a big difference. And so it's just fun it's the leveraged impact, right?
It is.
It's helping you with your book, then helps so many other people who are struggling with chronic illnesses, which then inspires and helps them to help other people. It's just this massive ripple effect, which is pretty beautiful.
That's cool.
And fun to be a part of. But I guess, so that's what's coming up. I mean, that's going to get just bigger and bigger. But if you look in the rearview mirror, what would you say is kind of, top 2 or 3 wins that you're proud of over the last year that you've been in the Accelerator?
Oh man, so many. I would say putting myself out there, like in podcast interviews, because like rejection's scary. I think I had a lot of imposter syndrome coming in to SPS, especially talking to that local author. It was like, who wants to hear your story? I'm like, oh shoot, like, and so that voice in the back of your head is always like, what am I doing here? So I think just taking that with stride, and I think I'm just kind of proud of like overcoming that voice in my head of like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. I think that's probably my first win. And then I think second, I think is just probably there's so many to choose from. So I would say podcasts and landing those, and then I would say just like getting out of my comfort zone. Like I think having that accountability with your team has helped me get out of my comfort zone. It's actually helped me grow as an individual, like as a business owner too. That's helped me implement things for my employees and different things like that. And so I think being able to do that and feeling like, I think coming in, I didn't know I was capable of doing that. And now I can. So I think those are my 2 biggest wins.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's a massive win.
Yeah.
And I'll mention one thing that might be helpful for you, because I'm just connecting some dots. You've probably heard of it before, but I've got this 7-Figure Principles podcast and 7-Figure Principles show. And so when you're talking about things to help with your team, with your employees, with your own business, that there's a lot of things that how we do business at Self-Publishing School that I've tried to codify in those videos and audio episodes and all that stuff to help people like you on your entrepreneurial journey. So that might be helpful. Tori, this has been awesome. Where can people go to buy your book and to find out more about what you're up to, the courses, all that good stuff? Yes,
you can go to Amazon and buy my book there. You can do Kindle, paperback, hardback, all the things. And then you can go to my website at torijoygeiger.com to look at the blog, to connect with me for coaching, all those types of resources. I have a 30-day gratitude challenge. Gratitude's huge. You'll read about it in my book, but there's a 30-day just free challenge you can download on my site. And then come chat with me on Instagram. I kind of live over at Instagram, so come see me at Tori Joy Geiger.
Cool. Her book, From Vulnerable to Victorious, that's the name of the book. You can find it on Amazon, like she mentioned. Check it out. Tori, what would be, if someone's listening to this right now, they're thinking about coming to Author Advantage Live, what would you say to them, and what might be one thing that they'll get out of it, or one reason they should come?
Come, number one, because you need to. It'll change your life. And then probably the thing to get the most out of it is to come fully prepared to engage with other authors. Like, don't turn your camera off or anything, like fully like be there. I have to admit, Author Advantage Live last year, one of the days was my sister-in-law's wedding, so I was that person with my camera off because I had to. But don't be that person, and fully just invest in it and have fun with it.
Cool. That's great. Guys, grab a ticket for Author Advantage Live. It is virtual. This is likely the last year that it will be virtual. So if that helps you get there, which you save a bunch of money on hotels and travel costs and all that good stuff, and watch from the comfort of your home or office or your sister's wedding. So we'd love to see you there. Maybe you'll even be in Tori's room. Go to authoradvantagelive.com, grab a ticket this week. We hope to see you there. Tori, you're awesome.
Thanks for having me.